such a time, the teachings of our fraternity come back to us with renewed force. God, immortality, friendship. These are what we strive to keep before the eyes and the minds of the brethren. These are the thoughts which have power to comfort and uplift us all now. There is no death. What seems so transcendent? All that is beautiful and good and true in human life is no more affected by the shadow of death than by the darkness that divides today from tomorrow. Our paths lead not to the grave, but through it. Immortality we are and ever shall be. We look not to another life, but to the perfecting of this one. In God's good time, we should be raised by his right hand to that higher and fairer phase of life, for which this is only the preparation. Our entire fraternity surrounds his loved ones with the assurance of its affection. We offer the support of our sympathy, the comfort of our faith, the inspiration of our hope, that they, with us, may look beyond this hour, through the portals of the infinite. So then, let us be increasingly grateful for every God-given virtue, which the life of our brother expressed, and let us be comforted and sustained by the assurance that life goes on, unbroken and uncorrupted, and that God alone is the life and light of man.
Let us pray together. Magnified and sanctified be the great name of God throughout the world, which he hath created according to his will. May he establish his kingdom during the days of your life and during the house of Israel. Speedily, yea soon, and say ye, Amen. May his great name be blessed. Exalted and honored be the name of thy Holy One. Blessed be he whose glory transcends, yea, is beyond all blessings and hymns, praise and consolations which are uttered in the world, and say ye, Amen. May there be abundant peace from heaven, and light for us and for all Israel, and say ye, Amen. May he who established peace in the heaven grant peace unto us and unto all Israel, and say ye, Amen.
Normally, we have a lambskin, which usually is tied around his waist when he is interring. And it's the reason for it, this is lambskin or white leather apron, is an emblem of innocence and the badge of a mason. It reminds us of that purity of life and conduct so essentially necessary to gaining admission into the celestial lodge above, where the supreme architect of the universe presides. This is the evergreen, and it's an emblem of our faith in the immortality of the soul. By this we are reminded that we have an immortal part within us. We shall survive the chilling blast of death, and springing into newness of life in realms beyond the grave, shall never, never die.
O God, our heavenly Father, grant that we sorrow not as those who know now thy assurance contained within thy holy word. May we look forward to that great gathering of thy faithful into their everlasting home. Defend us by thy grace, that we may live as heirs of this glorious hope. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. May the Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Amen.
You just witnessed a Masonic funeral. Bill was a good Mason. He was a nice person as well. But he was more than that. He was a master of his lodge, which was ours. And he conducted himself in a professional manner. He ran a lodge with approximately 500 members. And he really, all the memories of those that served under him were grateful and carry on forever and ever. Thank you for listening to us.
want to thank the members of the Moses Michael Hayes Masonic Lodge
Leave right through here, right?
here in Boston for their rituals and their traditions and the gifts and blessings that they brought to us this morning. I can't help but think that Bill would be so honored and touched by the presence of these traditions here today. These traditions which go back to the Revolutionary era here in Boston. This local chapter that was founded by a Jewish patriot of the Revolutionary War, Moses Michael Hayes, that once included Paul Revere in its ranks, and which was so precious to Bill, the organization of which he became the local master. And for a man who held tradition close in his life, it's an appropriate way to begin our honoring his life and his memory and his spirit today. Shalom to everyone and welcome. It's a privilege to be together with all of you today as we come together to honor the life and the spirit and all that was noble and good. And God knows there was a lot of it in Bill Epstein. We come together today as a community of friends and family to do what communities like ours have done since time immemorial, to come together and support one another and to support his family at this sad time in your lives. For Bill's love that united all of you in life, which death could not possibly sever. For his companionship that was shared along life's path, and which continues now through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and his mind, which brought joy and happiness and now should always be a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we come together today to express our gratitude. In times of grief, Jewish tradition calls upon us to hear the voices of our sacred scriptures, especially the book of Tehillim, the book of Psalms. So these are the words of Psalm 15 of a man of integrity from long ago. Adonai mi yagor bo halecha, mi yishkon bahar kodshecha, halech tamim u'foel tzedek, daver emet bilvavo, lo ragal l'shono lo asa l'reyehu ra'a, v'charpa lo nasa al krovo. O God, who may abide in your house, who may dwell in your holy mountain, those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others, nor wrong them, nor bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless, but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may, do not retract, who do not exploit others, who never take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. Adonai ma'on atah yita lanu bador vador, v'terem harim yoladu, v'atcholel eretz v'tevel, me'olam ad olam ata'el, t'shev enosh ad daka, v'tomer shuvu b'nei adam. Ki elef shanim be'enecha kiyom etmol ki avor, v'ashmora b'layla. O God, you have been our refuge in every generation. Before the mountains came into being, before you brought forth the earth and the world, from eternity to eternity you are God. You return us to dust and decree, return, O you mortals, for in your sight 1,000 years are as yesterday when it is past, as a watch in the night. You engulf us in sleep. We are like grass that renews itself. At daybreak it flourishes anew, at dusk it withers and dries up. The span of our lives is 80 years and 10, or given strength 80 years. But the best of those have trouble and sorrow. They pass us by all too speedily, and we are in darkness. Teach us, therefore, to number our days, that we may attain hearts of wisdom. Turn to us, O God. Show mercy to your servants. Satisfy us at daybreak with your steadfast love, that we may sing for joy all our days. Let your deeds be seen by your servants, your glory by their children. May your favor, O God, be upon us. Establish the work of our hands, that it may long endure. And from the book of Kohelet, from Ecclesiastes, we know these immortal words. L'kol zman ve'et l'kol chefetz tachat hashamayim. For everything there is a season, and a time for every experience under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to grieve and a time to dance. A time to throw stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to discard. A a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silent, and a time to speak. And by coming together here this morning, we acknowledge that here, now, this is a time to speak. And so it's a pleasure to call forward Bill's sons, Aaron and Mark, to lead us in some words of eulogy and memory.
Today we honor and remember my father, William Sherwin Epstein. And this afternoon he'll be moved to his final resting place next to his parents, Ida and Joseph, and next to his niece, Melissa. But knowing my father, in 3 months, he's going to want to move to a different part of the cemetery. And if history repeats itself, he's going to want to move back 3 months after that. So if my father's taught us anything, he's taught us that living a healthy lifestyle, a balanced diet, and regular exercise has no bearing whatsoever on the longevity of life. My father played the odds, and he won. His goal was to live as long as his father. His goal was to live to 86 years old. And when he turned 86, he decided he had to make better goals. So he decided to call it 90, just to be safe. But what will his legacy be? What will we remember about his life? About a month ago, I taught a class of adult students, and I asked them, what are the most important things in your life? And I was surprised at the answer. They were all the same. The number one answer was family. Family was number one in 150 out of 150 students. Health, happiness, friends, jobs, they were on the list, but they weren't number one. And I have to admit, I was a little bit surprised. Now, to me, family's family. But then it dawned on me. It dawned on me because a family can be strong when things are going well, when there's bar mitzvahs, when there's weddings, when there's holidays. Everyone is healthy. A family can be functional and strong. But the true test of a family is when there's stress and drama and chaos. And my father could cause all these within a matter of minutes, all at the same time. Mark and Annette stepped up. For the past 10 years, their full-time job was my father. Everything, every turn of his life was thanks to them. So his legacy could be his family. It may be not what he did in his life. It may not be the jobs that he had. It may not be that the places that he traveled to more places around the world than anyone could imagine. It may not be that he was chairman of the board for several years back in the 80s. And to be honest, we still don't know what that means, but I'm sure it was very important to him. But his legacy could be his family. His legacy is us. He was proud of us. We always knew he was proud of us. My father's lust of life was not actually doing the activities. It was never about snorkeling in the Great Barrier Reefs of Australia or going on safari in Africa or being one of the first groups to travel to China. It was never about that for him. It was about the story that he could tell afterwards. It was about the event. For him, telling the story to people over and over again was his enjoyment. And every time he told the story, it got better and better. Was it a little bit exaggerated? Just a little bit. Were there some that were just flat out not true? Yeah, there was some of those too. Were there some that were completely mind-boggling and defy logic? Yep, there were those. Were there some that were entertaining? Absolutely. They were all entertaining. He could tell a story. He was a storyteller. He lived his life for the story. The validity of the story was irrelevant. My father could be the only person in the world to have fought in the Korean War from Niagara Falls, New York, in a uniform that he received 45 years after the war. The stories that you're going to hear, we're going to ask when we do the Shiva to share the stories that you have of him, because that's what he would have wanted. He would have wanted to hear the stories, and I know all of you have the stories. There were two that were my favorite that always come up. One, when he went to Israel, and he thought it would be a good idea to take all the batteries from his camcorder and tape it up and put them in plastic soap dishes. Well, after 5 hours of Homeland Security and Israeli IDF interviews, he realized that that also wasn't a good idea. And my favorite story didn't actually happen to me. It happened to my brother, Mark. The one day that he called him and said, I just came from the doctor. I have a precancerous condition, a sun cancer. I need to sell the convertible immediately. I can't drive it. I need to sell it. And my brother let him go on for about 5 minutes, ranting and raving about how quickly he has to sell it. And after 5 minutes, my brother just said, Dad, just put the top up. So I'm going to ask you for the next few days when we sit Shiva, I would like you to share a story, because I know we all have them. Thank you. Here lies William Sherwin Epstein. My father was named after his grandfather, William. His middle name came on the ride to the hospital when his mother was in labor and didn't have a middle name picked out. And she looked up and she saw a building that said, had a sign that said William Sherwin Paints. And he was named. And that's where it actually came from. And we're just so glad there have been so many other places you could have passed by that would have been very difficult to explain. I've known Dad almost my whole life. He's been called a lot of different names over the years. William, Bill, Billy, Eppie, uncle, husband, twice, brother, son, grandson, grandpa, great-grandpa, and my two favorite, Dad and a character. My father worked his way through Northeastern University in their work-study program. He holds the school record for the longest-standing co-op job. His was 45 years. I stopped telling this to people when a few years ago somebody said to me it took him 45 years to graduate. We have a lot of memories. I just picked a couple. Dad loved to dance, as did his father. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I remember seeing him on stage. The Temple Emmanuel Couples Club had a production of The Pajama Game. And he was up with two couples singing and dancing, and I don't remember what I did yesterday, but I remember the song. It was this song called Steam Heat, and I can actually hear it, and I actually went to Pandora and found it, listened to it last night. And it's a kind of a cool synchronized dance, although his synchronization's a little different than others. And it was one of those cool things where you're up and down and then you're snapping together, and it was really kind of cool, and the audience is very quiet, and I was, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and I guess when it was the quietest pause, I was told that I screamed out, "Hey, that's my daddy!" And everybody in the auditorium heard us. But that was cool because he was doing something that he loved to do, and sometimes we heard the expression, he danced like nobody was watching. He also had one interesting characteristic, whether it was when he was dancing or when he was bowling in his bowling league or playing tennis, when there was a certain level of concentration, he had this move. We call it kind of tongue-in-cheek. It was like, and you could tell that it was an intense concentration. Whatever was going on, that he was dialed in. That he was given that, like he was looking for that one shot in tennis, and he was just going to do it. And it was kind of fun to see. We had a very nice childhood. Dad always worked hard. He made sure that we lived in a good community, in a nice home, that we got good education. We went to camp. When I was just shy of my bar mitzvah age, our cousins by the same name, Mark, his son was my age, and Bill was his father, moved from Worcester to Israel. So as a formality, we got an invitation. My folks got the invitation and decided to attend. So at just under 13 years old, my first trip of many to Israel, I stood next to my cousin at a bimmer at the wall, live with him at his bar mitzvah. It was an experience that I keep with me throughout my life. I even recorded it on a cassette, which is dating myself. I don't know if there's ever any cassette player to play it, or if I can even find the tape, but I recorded it. Dad, as you saw, was a Mason, and like everything else he did, he pushed and he excelled at it, and being just a Mason, for most people, is good enough. He pushed and became a Grand Master, and he was very proud of that. He wore his Masonic ring proudly. One memory, I apparently got his attention occasionally. When I was about 7 years old, we were on a family trip with our cousins, and my aunt and uncle were in two cars. Were in the car in front, and I went in their car so I could hang out with my cousin Barry. And my uncle got pulled over for speeding. And so my folks were following and kind of drifted kind of back and went off to the side to stay out of the way and not get noticed. And as my uncle was getting a ticket, since I was so proud of my dad, I reached up and yelled, "Hey, that's my dad!" pointing it out to the car that's 100 yards away. And the trooper pulled him up and actually gave him a ticket, saying that, well, if you were traveling with them, you were probably averaging the same speed. My father was so happy. I look back at it and say I got my first speeding ticket at the age of 7. And, of course, my only one. My brother, my sister, as I said, we were very fortunate. We didn't want for anything. I mean, we went to summer camp, and we had great bar and bat mitzvahs, and we were well educated, and we didn't leave school with any school loans. That was something that was also important to them. One day when came back from summer camp, they used to go and they'd pick you up at the bus. And my dad was a quiet, sedate, calm driver, but he had had a couple of pretty good fender benders in the prior season, and the car was tied up with plastic covering the windows and rope hanging on the bumpers. And so while we were camping, he got it all fixed up and had it painted even a different color, and it was really sharp. And he picked me up from camp, and he's all proud when we went home. And being an appreciative son, I wanted to do something nice for him. So the next day, I'm going to clean the car for him. So I took a towel, I took some cleaner, I tried one little spot and cleaned it very well. So I said, well, I'm going to do the whole thing. So I sprayed this foam cleaner on the trunk and down the whole side with loop-de-loops. I put eyeglasses on the windshield. And then I took the white towel and I cleaned the spot. My white towel was dark green, which was the same color of the car by coincidence. I learned that you don't use oven cleaner to clean a car. So my father was so happy and proud of me for that. He traveled for work, and when I was too old for camp, I went on a trip called California West, which was a cross-country trip. And I came home. He was away on a business trip, and I'm telling my mom about it, and all these great places we saw, and we really should do that. And we were so revved up, but by the time Dad came home from his trip, we pretty much decided that the family's going to buy an RV and go cross-country next summer. And we did. And it was an experience not only for us, but a lot of people are smiling right now for the second part of that trip. Because I'm appreciative and always trying to be helpful, we were going through Colorado, through the mountains, and it was a big RV, and it was heavy. And we ended up burning out the brakes because we were putting such a strain on it. So we had to do this big brake job in the middle of Colorado, and I explained to my father, because I was 15 or 16 and the expert in my mind, you gotta not just use the brakes when you're on these mountain roads. You need to downshift and let the transmission do some of the work so you don't burn out the brakes. So a little less than a week later, the transmission blew. Again, he appreciated all of my input. We went to, towed into a transmission shop. They put it up on jack stands, had to order parts. So we spent, I think it was about a week or so, living in a transmission shop and just doing daily trips. So I enjoyed helping, where I could. Dad's career kept progressing. He started a group called RAPV. It was a group of companies, including the one he worked for, Pilgrim, that used the same sales reps but were non-competitors. And he put together numerous annual trips that went all over the world, and it was incentive travel where you could sell so much of a product within the companies, get points, and earn a trip. I was able to go on some of these trips to places like Greece, Hong Kong, China, Japan, England. At a young age, I was exposed to a lot of experiences traveling. He also never forgot his friends and family. And when there was opportunities for them to join in on this trip, he found creative ways for them to do it. And several of his friends, also who are sitting here, were able to venture to some of these places, to parts of the world where ordinarily they might not have made that trip. So a common theme is, the better that he did and the more things he was involved in, he kept bringing everybody up with him, whether it be his friends, his families, the kids,
it was always for everybody. It really wasn't just for him. He liked the attention, but he shared the experience and looked forward to it. In those years, as his career continued, he was elected to chairman of the board of the Advertising Specialty Association, which he was very proud of, and he served his term, and he considered that work-wise one of his significant accomplishments. Now, my grandfather worked for the same company. It's multi-generation, the Siegel family. So Louis Siegel, who started the company, and my grandfather, I think, was their first employee. I think back then the difference between owner and partner was probably something like $500. Well, my grandfather had a 58-year career at Pilgrim. My father, I think, was just shy of 45. But in 1 year, they were promoted simultaneously. So together, Papa was promoted to vice president in charge of production, and Dad was promoted to executive vice president in charge of sales. I thought that was just kind of pretty cool all around. So life lessons that Dad has passed along is the value of having long lifetime friends. There are friends sitting here that he has known for 70 plus years. It's really 80 plus, but I was being nice. That's incredible. I followed that lead. I have friends that are here that I have known for over 50 years, well over 50. He valued his friends. He did what he could for them, always had them in his mind. And wherever he was in the world, he always kept us in his heart. And we're going to miss him. We love him very much. And I'm saying goodbye for myself, for my brother, sister, mother, Ethel, who could not be here. Today she's down in Florida and she's watching live streamed. And we're all going to miss him. We really are. As I said, my favorite name for him, 2 names, was Dad and a character. And he was both. Goodbye, Dad. We love you.
So on behalf of all of us, I want to express my thanks to Aaron and Mark. Each of you honor your dad so beautifully with your words, with your thoughtful reflections on behalf of your family. And with those words, you honor all of us as well, and we're grateful. What greater tribute could there be for a parent at the end of his life than to have his sons express such words of love and tribute? And we thank you. So this week, Jewish communities around the world are engaged with the opening chapters of the book of Deuteronomy, which is known as Devarim in Hebrew. Devarim means words. As Jews, words are very precious for us. Sometimes they're the only tool that we have to be able to express honor, respect, love, like we do here today. And Deuteronomy is a book of Devarim. It is a book of words. It can be seen as one long speech delivered by Moses at the end of his life and reflecting on his life's work and his journey and all the different paths that his journey took together with the people of Israel. Moses himself has come a long way. In the days before the Exodus, Moses protested that he was no ish devarim. He was not a man of words. And 40 years later, at the time of Deuteronomy, that's precisely what he's become, giving this long and sustained and extraordinary speech. Commenting on this transformation, Rabbi Harold Kushner once said, "The change in Moses, where did it come from? It's not due to the idea that he suddenly learned or discovered great rhetorical skills. No. It came from his enthusiastic commitment to his message." And those words on the week's Torah portion struck me as I was reflecting on the stories that Bill's family tells about him. His enthusiastic commitment to his message of life and living, to family and friends. Amy said yesterday that his perfect motto for him would be always on the move. You weren't just referring to all the places that he and Ethel lived and his travels around the world, but also describes his enthusiasm for life, for tennis, for dancing, for movies, for travel, for telling bigger-than-life tales about these adventures. And so I was thinking about how on a day like today, we speak of a person's Yerusha. Yerusha is the Hebrew word which means inheritance, but it's not an inheritance of material things. Rather, it's how a next generation embraces the spiritual, moral, personal gifts that the previous generation has bequeathed. And as we've just heard from Aaron and Mark, Bill's legacy to his family and friends is profound. So, we acknowledge today this rich and proud Yerusha that he delivers to the next generation of your family, to all his friends, including some of the lifelong friends that I suspect are in this room today. So to Mark and Annette, and to Amy and Paul, and to Aaron, you have our deepest condolences today. To Bill's grandchildren and nieces and nephews and cousins and the next generation, even the great-grandchild, he leaves a proud Yerusha for all of you to cling to and to give you inspiration into the future. To his sister Judy, who knew him longer than anybody else in the world, we too express our profound condolences today. And today we want to acknowledge, of course, Bill's beloved wife, Ethel. Ethel, who couldn't make the trip up from Florida to be in this chapel with us today, but is watching us from afar. And from afar, we send you as well our deepest affection and condolences. Today we say, Zichrono Livracha. May the memory of William Sherwin Epstein be a deep and abiding blessing to all who knew him and who loved him and who were touched by his life. Amen. We'll take a few moments now for silent prayer and silent remembrance. Please rise for the El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Amtseim Nucha Menichona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Utorim, Kazohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Shmuel ben Yosef Shehalach Lolamo, Bal Harachamim, Yasirehu B'Seter Knafav Lolamim, V'Yitzror B'Yitzror HaChayim Et Nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar Amen. O God, full of compassion, eternal spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Shmuel ben Yosef, to William Sherwin Epstein, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence in the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say,